My name is Rachel Morgan. I have 27 years old and I'm from Sacramento, California. That Friday, everything seemed normal. The sky was clear, my car was gassed up, and my favorite playlist was playing as I drove toward the coast. Big Sur. It was my first day off in weeks. I just wanted to breathe, see the sea, reconnect. But within seconds, everything turned into chaos. A pickup truck, speeding, invaded my lane on a blind curve. I tried to swerve. I screamed. I closed my eyes. The sound of the impact was the last thing I remember, or at least the last thing I should remember. The strange thing is that I kept listening. I heard the sound of twisted metal, the horns, the hurried footsteps, but I felt no pain. When I opened my eyes, I saw my body, yes, my body, trapped between the wreckage, motionless, and me. I was there, floating above it all, as if I were an invisible spectator of my own end. I tried to scream, but no one could hear me. That's when everything went silent. A silence that wasn't empty, but full. A kind of silence that envelops you and pulls you in. At that moment, I felt that something, or somebody, was calling me. And that's when the most unbelievable part of my life, or my death, began. If that already gave you goosebumps, wait until you hear what happened next. Leave your like and subscribe to the channel now, because what I have to tell will change the way you see the world. I woke up to a sound that seemed to come from underwater. Muffled voices, beeping, a humming in the background. Everything around me was white and cold. I couldn't move anything, only my eyes. It took me a while to realize where I was, a hospital. There were tubes in my mouth, sensors stuck to my chest, and an aggressive light cutting off my vision. Later, I found out that I had been taken to the UC San Diego Medical Center, one of the best clinics in California. I was rescued by a passing truck driver minutes after the accident. According to the doctors, Ty arrived without a heartbeat, no pulse, clinically dead for nearly 4 minutes. But it was what they couldn't explain that really stuck with me. As my family cried outside, as doctors used defibrillators, adrenaline and quiet faith to bring me back, I was somewhere else. During those minutes, I felt something impossible to describe. A place that wasn't a dream, but it wasn't this world either. A space where time seemed different, as if everything was suspended, floating between before and after. I could see the people around me, but I could also feel their thoughts. There was a doctor with cold hands that were shaking slightly. A nurse was praying silently for me, calling me daughter. My father was sobbing in the hallway, repeating my name like a desperate prayer. But what scared me the most was the moment when all this disappeared. The white light of the hospital was replaced by a welcoming darkness, not pitch black, but like a veil. And there, in that unrecognizable calm, something pulled me in. It wasn't physical force. It was a call, an invitation, and I went. The hospital room disappeared. The voices stopped. And for the first time, I felt complete. But what I saw next goes beyond anything science can explain. I went. No pain, no fear, no body. It was like gliding through something unseen, a space without form, but with presence, as if the universe itself was breathing around me. There was no floor, no sky, no walls, and yet I felt myself being carried in some direction. Suddenly, there appeared before me a tunnel. Yes, I know how cliché that sounds. I've heard people scoff at stories about tunnels of light, as if they were delusions or inventions of suggestible people. But what I saw was too real to be imagination. It was vivo. The tunnel wasn't just light, it pulsed, it vibrated. It was as if an intelligence was behind it, waiting for me. And when I entered, I was overcome by a feeling I had never felt in my entire life: absolute peace. A love that demanded nothing, that simply embraced me, accepted me. A love that knew everything about me, my mistakes, my fears, my shame, and still embraced me. As I walked forward, images began to appear around me. Flashes of my childhood, of my first kiss, of the time I lied to my mother and regretted it in the same second. It was as if my life was being reviewed, but without judgment, only understanding, as if someone were saying to me, I know, I've always known. And yet, you are loved. At some point in the tunnel, I realized I was no longer alone. Had other presences there. Not human, but familiar. Some just watched. Others seemed to guide. I felt like they were souls, or consciousnesses. I don't know the right name, but they were there, and I recognized them without ever having seen them. And then, he appeared. Not walking, not floating, just present. It was a light so bright that it should have blinded me, but it didn't. It was as if my eyes, or what was left of them, were finally seeing what they had always wanted to see. I didn't see a face like we see here, but you knew who was. Jesus. Not as a religious figure, like in paintings or stained glass, but as an essence, a truth that didn't need to be explained. When he looked at me, or rather, when he enveloped me in his presence, all my questions disappeared. The why of life, the fear of death, the guilt, the searching, everything dissolved. I tried to speak, I tried to ask, but he wouldn't speak with words. It was something direct, immediate. He spoke inside me, and the first thing I felt was, "You're not done yet." At that moment, my heart broke. I didn't want to go back. I never imagined I could feel such peace. But then, he showed me something that still gives me chills to this day. A glimpse of what's to come. Something no one is prepared to see. The moment he said, "I'm not done yet," everything around me stopped. The tunnel dissolved, and I was enveloped in darkness. But it wasn't dark. It was a void so deep it made the silence scream. It felt like I was outside of time, outside of the universe, a place where nothing existed except him and me. And it was there, in that non-place, that something happened. I felt as if the very fabric of reality was being ripped apart, exposing a layer we never see. It was as if I was on the other side of the curtain. And what was there? It wasn't just light. Jesus, or whatever presence I recognized as him, stood before me. But something had changed. There was a seriousness now, a weight in the air. Without words, he began to show me visions. First, an American city was being swallowed by water. I saw entire buildings submerged, people running, screaming. It was as if time had sped up and shown an inevitable catastrophe. Then I saw children in classrooms being surrounded by a kind of frightening silence. It wasn't physical violence, it was something deeper, an emotional void, a spiritual disconnect, as if hope was slowly being drained from the younger generations. And then something even more disturbing. I saw the earth from above, spinning, and thousands of dark spots appearing on its surface. They spread like cracks in glass, and I understood. It was not physical destruction, it was spiritual. People losing their sense of purpose, disconnecting from each other, as if we are forgetting what it means to be human. They forgot to feel, was what I felt coming from him. He wasn't angry. He was sad, a serene but devastating sadness, like someone who loves deeply and sees that love rejected, generation after generation. And then came the part that changed everything. He showed me what would happen if nothing was done. The world would not end in explosions or fire, but in indifference. A world where no one listened to each other anymore, where love was treated as weakness, where the sacred was mocked until it disappeared. A world where living would become just existing. I cried. Even without a body, I cried. The pain wasn't physical. It was existential. The pain of understanding how far we are moving away from everything that is true. And it was there that he said the only thing that sounded like an order: you need to tell. Not an apocalyptic warning, not a threat, but a plea. He knew I would doubt myself, that the world would doubt me. But still, he insisted. I had to go back, speak out, record. Someone would listen, and that person would change something, and that change would multiply. That was how he worked, from within, never by imposition. At that instant, the void began to crumble. I felt like I was being sucked back, ripped from that dimension where the truth was too clear to hide. I tried to hold on to that peace, that presence, that gaze, but it was too late. The world was pulling me back. Going back was like falling from a place where there was no ground, a fall that didn't hurt the body, because I didn't feel it yet, but tore the soul apart. I was being pulled, sucked back into something that now felt narrow, heavy, cold. The hospital, the sound of the monitors, the pain. But before I completely crossed that border, he gave me the message. Not with voice, not with sentences. It was like a direct download to the soul, an indelible impression that I carry with me to this day, even though I can't fully express it in words. The message was simple, yet overwhelming. They have forgotten who they are. Remind them. Remind them what it feels like, what it is to love without bargaining. Remind them what it feels like to be compassionate when the whole world chooses cynicism. Remind them that there is something beyond, that life is more than pain, status, likes, or noisy distractions. But there was something else. He showed me a while, not an exact date, but a window, a gap in the near future, as if something were approaching. A collective choice, a spiritual breaking point at which humanity would decide between two paths, reconnection or emotional collapse. They can still remember, but they have to want to. That was the last thing I felt from him before I woke up with a scream stuck in my throat and my heart racing. The feeling was like I had returned from a place where everything made sense, to a world that seemed unrecognizable to me. I opened my eyes. The hospital lights burned me. I cried, not because of the physical pain, but because now I knew. I knew too much. And it was there, lying down, connected to wires and machines, that I began to write everything down. Every image, every feeling, every sentence was delivered to me like an eternal whisper. I didn't want to forget anything. Not the fear, not the light, not the message. And now that you've heard that part, I need to know, do you believe that humanity can still remember who it really is? Tell me in the comments. Not because that's what's done in videos, but because maybe, just maybe, if we start talking about this, everything can change. My body did not welcome me with tenderness. It dragged me back violently, as if rejecting the soul that had returned before its time. My chest burned as if it were on fire. My lungs felt like they wanted to explode, and the sounds around me were deafening. People screamed. Alarms rang, hands pressed on my chest, and I, lost between two worlds, just wanted to go back, over there. I felt the tears flow before I even understood where I was. Every part of my body hurt, but nothing hurt more than the emptiness that was left inside me. A kind of mourning for a place that was never mine, but was now the only place where I felt whole. The doctors said it was a miracle, that few come back after so long without a pulse. My family cried with joy, but I didn't smile, because inside, I was in pieces. I was in the ICU for 4 days, unable to sleep, unable to explain, just observing the world with eyes that had already seen too much. And that's when the fear began. I began to realize that what I had seen, it wasn't just symbolic. Something started to happen right there in the hospital. One of the nurses who held my hand during my hospitalization suffered a nervous breakdown a few days later. She said that she felt a presence next to me while I was unconscious, that she dreamed of a light that spoke silently. One doctor, the same one who had led my resuscitation, quit without explanation a week later. Before he left, he came into my room, looked me in the eye, and said, "You saw something, didn't you?" I saw it too, but I didn't have the courage to follow through. The physical pain was passing, but the emotional pain only got worse. People treated me like a living miracle, but I felt like a bomb about to explode, as if I carried within me a truth that the world could not bear. I started writing compulsively, whole notebooks. She wrote as if she was being guided. I remembered words, scenes, feelings so intense that sometimes my body trembled. And the strangest thing, I started to feel things before they happen. Vivid dreams, premonitions, subtle nudges that came out of nowhere, like reminders that there was still something I needed to accomplish. I didn't tell anyone. How can you tell them that you died, saw Jesus, and came back with a message about the spiritual end of humanity? Until, one morning, I woke up with a single sentence in my head. They will only listen when the signs are visible. And it was at that moment that things around me began to change. Not small coincidences, but real signs. The kind of sign that turns doubt into certainty. The kind of sign that turns a story into a mission. When I finally had the strength to speak, silence was my answer. My mother thought it was post-traumatic delirium. My father became uncomfortable, staring at the floor, looking away as if my pain was too great to face. My friends disappeared. Some sent generic messages of support, but as I talked about what I saw, about the message I received, they drifted away. Even doctors avoided the subject. One, after hearing part of what I had said, suggested I talk to a psychiatrist. Another said that the human brain can create powerful illusions in extreme situations. They preferred to believe in hallucinations rather than accept the possibility of something greater. But you knew what he had experienced, and that was what hurt the most. Knowing, with every fiber of my soul, that I was there, that I saw, that I heard, that I received a message, and now nobody listened to me. Isolated in my own world, I began to write even more. Instead of trying to convince people with spoken words, I began to document everything. Details, sensations, visions, the face of the child crying in the tunnel, the city being swallowed by water, the sadness in his eyes. At first, I thought it was just for me, a way to not go crazy. But over time, I realized that something was guiding me, as if my writing were a preparation, a manual for what was to come. Every word pulled me deeper into that experience, and every page made me more aware that something was approaching. I started having dreams, repetitive ones, always the same place, an empty square, trees swaying in the wind, and an invisible presence behind me, whispering, "Speak, even if they don't listen. Speak." I woke up with my heart racing, and one thing I was certain of: I could no longer wait for people to believe me. I had to act. It was then that I decided to tell my story to the world, without filters, without fear, without worrying about who would laugh or doubt it. Not out of vanity, not for fame, but because inside me something said, the first soul that truly listens will awaken others. I opened my laptop. I recorded the first video. My face was still pale. My eyes were marked by the trauma and what I had seen. I spoke of the accident, of the tunnel, of the presence, of the message. I posted it, and I waited. In the first few hours, almost nothing. 1 or 2 comments. Some said, "This is fake." Others, "It looks like a movie." But then, one comment changed everything. I saw him too. I thought I was crazy. From there, more came, and more. People sharing similar experiences. People from all over the world describing feelings, visions, near-death experiences that sounded incredibly similar to mine. I wasn't alone, and neither were they. Maybe the world wasn't ready to listen yet, but part of it began to awaken. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, that my brain was still trying to balance itself between experience and the real world. But the signals wouldn't stop, and the more I tried to ignore them, the more intense they became. The first was the mirror. I woke up one morning still recovering and went to the bathroom. When I looked at my reflection, I felt an immediate chill. It wasn't my face. It was the look. Something in my eyes had changed. More than sadness or trauma. It was like I saw something that others didn't. And in that instant, for a split second, I swear I saw someone behind me. I turned around quickly. Nothing. But the cold on the back of my neck stayed for hours. Then came the watches. All the clocks in the house, digital, analog, cell phone, oven, started to get stuck at the same time. 3:17 in the morning. Every single day. Always that number. I would wake up in a cold sweat at that exact time with the feeling that someone was watching me. It wasn't terror, but a silent call, as if something was about to be revealed, if I had the courage to look. But what really changed everything was the news. I turned on the TV a few days later, trying to distract myself, and saw a live report. Abnormal tide hits part of the coast in Oregon, leaving families homeless. What made me freeze was not the tragedy. It was the image. The same street, the same type of houses, the same angle of view as I had when I was there. It was the city I saw sinking. The pattern of the waves, the position of the poles, even the way people ran. Everything was identical to what I had been shown. At that moment, doubt died. The message was not just symbolic, it was being fulfilled. From there, I started mapping the signals. I noticed patterns that had previously eluded me. People who dreamed of the same light, who saw repeating numbers, who heard soft voices saying, "Remember," before falling asleep. People who have never met from different places, describing the same presence, the same silent voice. I started writing everything down, every story, every message, and over time, I realized that these people were being activated somehow, as if each one had a piece of the puzzle. And little by little, those pieces were falling into place. Some messages were clear, others were confusing, but they all had a common sentiment: urgency. Something was approaching, something that could no longer be ignored. And it was at this point that my own home began to change. Lights flickered whenever I talked about him. Electronic devices turned on by themselves. My dog started barking at the empty room, always in the same corner, always at 3:17. My dreams began to intensify, no longer just with images, but with notices. In one of them, I heard, "Time is compressing." I didn't understand it at the time, but I felt like it wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. What started as a personal experience was now something collective, as if the world was being silently prepared to hear what was to come. It all started with an email. Subject: urgent, interview about your experience. It was from a freelance journalist named Daniel Hayes, from Los Angeles. At first, I thought he was just another curious person looking for bizarre content to go viral. But something about the tone of the message caught my attention. He wasn't asking for a sensationalist interview. He talked about testimony, truth, and calling. To answer, we spoke via video that same day. Daniel had tired eyes and the calm manner of someone who has seen too much. He listened to me without interrupting, taking note of every detail. When I finished, he was silent for a few seconds and then said to me, "You're not the only one, but you're the only one who's talking." 2 days later, the video was posted on an independent YouTube channel. The title was simple: "She died, saw Jesus, and came back with a warning." I hesitated before watching. My voice, my face, my pain. It was all there for anyone to judge, mock, attack. But there was no turning back now. It was as if something bigger than me had taken control of the story. And honestly, part of me knew that was the next step. In the first few hours, the video almost went unnoticed. But then a spiritual influencer with millions of followers shared the link with an unsettling caption: "If that's true, we need to rethink everything." It was like lighting a match in a dry field. Within 24 hours, the video had surpassed 500,000 views. Within 3 days, it had surpassed 2 million. And with the exposure came chaos. Social media exploded with theories. Religious groups began to debate my experience. Some called me the chosen one, others a heretic. Pastors, scientists, skeptics, mystics appeared, each pulling my story in their own direction. But there was one thing they all shared. No one could ignore. I was invited to talk shows. I turned them all down. I didn't want to become entertainment. This story wasn't for the stage. It was for waking people up. But then something even stranger happened. Daniel disappeared. I tried to contact him. Emails, messages, nothing. A mutual friend said he had stepped away for health reasons, but something didn't add up. Shortly before he disappeared, he sent me one last message. "They're watching us. Be careful. Not everyone wants this to get out." It was at this point that I understood that the message I had received was not just about beliefs. It was about threatening structures. There were powerful people who would rather the world remained asleep. That fear, indifference, and noise would continue to control everything. But now, it was too late. Thousands of people started writing to me. They shared experiences, visions, dreams with the same luminous figure, with the same phrase repeated in different languages. They forgot. Remind them. I was no longer a person with a story. I was part of something much bigger and perhaps more dangerous than I had imagined. What was once a whisper turned into a storm. After the video went viral, the global reaction was like an invisible wave sweeping across every corner of the planet. But it wasn't just about my story. Something bigger started happening, and no one could explain it. In different countries, stories almost identical to mine emerged. People from different cultures, religions, and languages described similar visions: a presence of light, an urgent message, a silent call. Ordinary people, doctors, soldiers, mothers, teenagers, all with the same phrase on their lips: "I saw it, and they are warning us." The scientific world tried to react. Universities launched studies on NDEs, trying to classify the phenomenon as a neurological illusion. Psychiatrists speculated about mass hysteria fueled by social media, but the more they tried to discredit it, the more stories emerged. More signs. The World Health Organization called an emergency meeting to discuss the psychological effects of the viralization of spiritual experiences. But behind the scenes, what really worried leaders was something else: people's reaction. Silent protests began to spring up in the cities. People sat in the squares in silence with signs saying, "Remember." Crowded churches with no sermons. Crowds just listening, waiting, feeling. The repercussions were so intense that even the news changed their tone. Newspapers stopped laughing at the girl of light to ask, "What if it's true?" But with the attention came threats. I received anonymous messages, calls from numbers that didn't exist. One of them, in a male voice, simply said, "You're waking up too many people, stop." The lights in my house started to flicker in unison. A drone flew over my backyard for 2 nights in a row. And then, something even more disturbing. A man in a dark suit appeared out of nowhere at my front door, stared at me for a few seconds, and then walked away without saying a word. The security cameras went dark at that very moment. Coincidence? But even with the fear, something inside me grew. A courage I didn't know I had. Because more than ever, the signs were everywhere. There were mild earthquakes in places where there had never been tremors. Animals acting strangely. Children describing dreams of a man of light, saying that the weather is changing. And most striking of all, the repetition of the same date in countless reports from different people. October 17th. It was still April, but the message repeated itself like a warning. Something important would happen on that date. Something decisive. I didn't know if it would be physical, spiritual, energetic, but I knew it wasn't a coincidence. I started getting everything ready, shooting more videos, organizing the reports, contacting key people. And for the first time since the accident, I felt like I wasn't just telling a story. I was guiding people to something we didn't yet understand, but which would soon, very soon, be revealed. The question was no longer whether the world would believe. The question was, what would the world do? When everything started to happen, when you tell the truth, the world reacts. But when the truth touches something invisible, forces no one can see but everyone can feel, the reaction is not just resistance, it is persecution. That's how it all started to fall apart. In the eyes of the public, my life seemed like a spiritual mission. To some, I was a messenger. To others, a delusion with too much scope. But what no one saw was behind the scenes. The loneliness, the increasingly direct threats, the fear that at any moment, someone could silence not only my voice, but my existence. I received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo of me, taken from a distance, with the following handwritten phrase, "Silence is also faith." My bank account was blocked due to suspicious activity. My social media accounts began to suffer coordinated attacks. False allegations, attempts to take down my videos, my story being distorted in groups that accused me of everything from fraud to extremism. But the hardest blow was yet to come. My brother Liam was always skeptical. He never believed anything I told him, but he loved me. He defended me even though he didn't understand. "I don't know what you saw, Rachel," he would say, "but I know you're not crazy." One night he called me. His voice was shaking. He said he was being followed, that his email account had been hacked, that someone had warned him to stay away from me. Hours later, I got the news. He had been in a car accident on a road he knew like the back of his hand. The report said, brake failure. But the mechanic at the garage where he had his car serviced swore that the brakes had been perfect 2 days earlier. Liam died instantly. I fell into an abyss I didn't know existed. The pain was unbearable. And the worst part of me felt guilty. As if my choice to speak had cost the life of the only person who protected me without asking for explanations. I thought about stopping, about deleting everything, about disappearing. But it was during the wake that something happened. A lady I had never seen before, clear eyes, soft voice, came over, took my hand, and said, "He knew, and now he's with them. Don't stop. You were chosen because you feel, and those who feel are never alone." She disappeared soon after. No one knew who she was. None of the cemetery's security cameras recorded her entry. That sentence lifted me up, because the truth is expensive, but the price of silence is even higher. It was then that I recorded the most important video of my life. Swollen eyes, trembling voice, and a single sentence in the opening. They are trying to silence me, so I will scream even louder. The message I received was not just about hope. It was about courage. Courage to feel, to love, to resist, to not let darkness win. And now, with the date drawing ever closer, I knew the world was reaching its choice point, and everything indicated that before the turn, there would be one last revelation. October 17th arrived like any other. Clear skies, normal traffic. People were rushing to and fro, distracted by their daily lives, unaware that that date had been announced in dreams, visions, and signs all over the world. But I knew. I felt it in my chest, like an invisible drum that was beating louder and louder. Something was about to happen, and it wasn't something the eyes could see. The night before, I dreamed of Liam. He was dressed in white, on a green hill, looking out at the horizon. He smiled but didn't say anything. He just pointed. When I turned to where he was pointing, I saw thousands of people gathered, looking up at the sky, waiting for something that didn't yet have a name, but that everyone seemed to feel. I woke up with tears in my eyes and a heavy heart. I knew what I needed to do. I turned on the camera for the last time. I filmed in silence for a few minutes, just breathing. Then I spoke, low, firm, straight from the depths of my soul. If you are seeing this, it is because the time has come. I do not know if I will be here when it is all over, but you will be, and you will remember. I uploaded the video to my channel, but scheduled it to be automatically published at midnight on the 17th. After that, I disappeared. I didn't leave a note, no travel record, nothing. Just my phone turned off, my house locked, and all the notes scattered on the table as if someone would find them and know what to do with them. The news of my disappearance took over the networks. Some said I ran away. Others, that I was taken. Conspiracies emerged on all sides. But what no one expected was the video effect. The recording went viral within minutes. Not because of the production, but because of the strange sensation it provoked. People reported feeling goosebumps, crying without knowing why, remembering old dreams and forgotten feelings. In the recording, I said that the last part of the prophecy was not about destruction. It was about wake up, a collective, silent, inner awakening, a turning point that would begin in every heart willing to remember who you really are. And something curious started to happen. That week, hospitals reported comatose patients responding for the first time in months. Children began drawing light figures with sad eyes and outstretched hands. Security cameras around the world recorded power outages in the same minute. 3:17 a.m. The world didn't end, but something invisible broke, like a membrane peeling away to reveal what was always there. What about me? I was never seen again. But every now and then, someone reports meeting me in unlikely places. Libraries, temples, deserts, ancient ruins. Always the same description. Serene gaze, firm voice, a phrase repeated with tenderness. They forgot, but now, they're remembering. Maybe I'm gone, or maybe I've just changed shape, But if you're listening to this now, then there's still time. Because the last prophecy wasn't about me. It was about you. I didn't ask for this. I didn't wish to die. I didn't choose to see what I saw. But in some way that I don't yet fully understand, the truth chose me. And when that happens, you have two options: run away or talk. I chose to speak. My story is not just about lights, visions, or supernatural encounters. It's about remembering who we really are. When the world insists on distracting us from ourselves, it's about feeling when everything around us tries to anesthetize us. It's about having courage when everything seems to want us to keep quiet. If you've come this far, it may not be by chance. Maybe what I experienced, or something similar, is also whispering within you. And if it is, I ask you, do not ignore. Speak, feel, share. Not for me, but because this story, which was once just mine, today is ours, and it continues. In every person who listens, in every heart that awakens, in every soul that chooses to remember, and not just exist. Now tell me, what do you feel after all this? Write in the comments, really. I'll be there, reading, and maybe responding. Because silence can be comfortable, but the truth is what transforms everything. If you've made it this far, really thanks. If this story touched you, if you felt something inside, so leave your like, not for me, but because it shows me that you felt it too. And if you haven't signed up yet, sign up now. I still have a lot to tell you. Things you might need to hear too. And now, click on the next video that appears on the screen. It continues exactly where this journey brought you. Nothing ends here. In truth, it's now that it all begins.